Have you ever wondered where the white-skinned people of Europe and Asia come from, according to the Bible? Often, when we talk about the origins of humanity, we dive into scientific or historical theories, but the Bible also offers a surprisingly rich perspective on this topic. And here's the controversy. Why does almost no one talk about this? While many believe that racial differences divide us, the Bible presents a completely different perspective, one that reveals unity under a much greater divine purpose. You're about to discover how the descendants of Japheth, the son of Noah, gave rise to entire civilizations in Europe and Asia. And the most intriguing part? This is far more connected to our modern reality than we realize. If you've ever been curious about your own roots or want to understand how these ancient stories still influence the present, this video will open your eyes in a new and powerful way. When it comes to human origins, few texts are as rich and fascinating as the Bible. According to the scriptures, the lineage of light-skinned people who spread across Europe and Asia traces back to Japheth, one of Noah's sons. This historical connection is often overlooked, but it's there, waiting to be discovered. It's like exploring a secret lineage that shaped nations and civilizations. By understanding these details, we can connect the dots between biblical origins and human history more deeply. Imagine the scene. After the flood, the earth begins to be repopulated. Noah and his sons, including Japheth, are tasked with bringing new life to the world. The Bible suggests that the descendants of Japheth spread mainly to the north and west, occupying regions of Europe and Asia. Thus, light-skinned people emerged and began shaping the history of these continents. It's like looking at a puzzle where each piece reveals something about our roots. Interestingly, this biblical narrative isn't isolated. Several historical and archaeological records support the idea that the descendants of Japheth established some of the first great civilizations in the West. Europe, with its vibrant empires and cultures, bears the mark of these descendants. Have you ever stopped to think about how modern cultures can have such deep roots in ancient stories? It transforms our perception of who we are today. But Japheth's influence didn't stop in Europe. Some of his descendants also ventured into Asia, bringing with them not only their culture but also their traditions and innovations. Peoples like the Mongols and even the ancient Japanese may have an ancestral link to this biblical patriarch. What does this mean for us? It means that our historical connections go far beyond the geographic borders we know today. And of course, all of this raises a bigger question. Don't these narratives suggest that, deep down, we are all connected in one way or another? The Bible reminds us that, regardless of color or race, we are all children of God. This perspective transcends physical differences and invites us to see humanity as one big family, united by faith and history. What else could we discover if we looked at our origins through this same lens? After the Great Flood, Noah and his 3 sons were tasked with repopulating the earth, and each of them carried a responsibility that would shape the future of humanity. Among them, Japheth is often mentioned as the father of white-skinned nations. According to the Bible, the descendants of Japheth spread across vast regions, from the steppes of Asia to the far reaches of Europe. It's fascinating how a single figure can be linked to the emergence of so many ethnicities and cultures. Japheth, alongside his brothers Shem and Ham, began this journey in a completely renewed world, a true rebirth of humanity. The descendants of Shem populated the Middle East, while Ham's descendants went to Africa. But it was Japheth who headed north, to the cold and mountainous lands of Europe and Asia. Imagine the crossing of these unknown lands and the cultural impact they created over the centuries. Isn't it curious how these movements shaped the peoples we know today? If we analyze it historically, we can draw a direct line between Japheth and the peoples who formed the foundation of European civilizations. Celts, Germans, Greeks, and Scandinavians are all, in a sense, heirs to this lineage. These tribes, which later became great empires, made invaluable contributions to the modern world. Have you ever thought that European history, with all its empires and revolutions, can be traced back to this biblical figure? Japheth's influence wasn't limited to Europe. In Asia, his descendants also played important roles in shaping complex and dynamic cultures. The fact that so many Asian cultures have similar narratives about their origins shows the interconnectedness of these stories. Isn't it incredible to think that, in some ways, the borders between Western and Eastern civilizations are more intertwined than we imagine? And of course, all of this makes us reflect on the role these lineages play in constructing human identity. Japheth's story isn't just about the formation of peoples, but about how these stories connect us to something greater. Could understanding these origins help us see beyond differences and focus on the similarities we all share? The descendants of Japheth didn't just spread across the world, they formed some of the earliest and most important civilizations in history. When we talk about ancient peoples like the Vikings, the Celts, and the Greeks, we're really looking at the legacies left behind by these ancestral groups. These cultures shaped the social, military, and cultural development of all of Europe, and their achievements echo to this day. Imagine what it would be like to trace your roots back to a single biblical lineage, connecting the distant past to the present. From the mountains of the Caucasus to the icy lands of Scandinavia, Japheth's descendants settled in regions that would become the cradles of powerful civilizations. The Celts, for example, dominated Western Europe for centuries, influencing the art, religion, and political organization of several nations. The Vikings, with their daring expeditions, spread their culture across much of Europe and even the Americas. Isn't it incredible to think that these conquerors might share a common origin? And of course, we can't forget the ancient Greeks, whose philosophical and scientific achievements are still studied and admired today. Ancient Greece is often cited as the cradle of Western civilization, and its contributions to politics, philosophy, and art continue to shape the modern world. The history of the peoples who inhabited this region traces back to the descendants of Japheth, who settled in the Mediterranean, creating one of the most influential cultures in history. Want to delve deeper into biblical themes like this one? Check out our exclusive ebook in the comments. It offers a detailed analysis and spiritual reflections that complement this video. Don't miss out. Download your copy now. The Nordic peoples, in turn, spread across Scandinavia, creating a warrior and mythological culture that continues to fascinate us today. What's interesting is that these cultures, even though geographically distant, share certain linguistic and cultural similarities, pointing to a common origin. By looking at the trajectory of these peoples, we realize that the borders we know today are the result of centuries of migrations and interactions. This network of historical connections not only gives us a broader view of our origins, but also shows us how humanity is interconnected. It's a powerful lesson that, no matter where we come from, the roots that connect us run deep and share a common starting point. And this makes us think, what else can these civilizations teach us about the construction of human identity? The connection between the descendants of Japheth and Asian civilizations is a fascinating aspect of the biblical narrative that often goes unnoticed. According to some scholars, the tribes that migrated to Asia helped shape ancient cultures such as the Mongols, Japanese, and Koreans. This movement of peoples to the east suggests that, despite geographical distances, the roots of Western and Eastern civilizations are more intertwined than we might imagine. It shows how human history is woven through threads of migration and cultural exchange. The Mongols, for example, are known for their vast territorial expansion and contributions to the unification of much of Asia. There is evidence suggesting that some of their cultural and social practices may have been influenced by this ancestral biblical legacy. When you look at the vastness of the Mongol Empire, with its military discipline and social structure, it's interesting to think that, deep down, they might be connected to the same ancestors who founded civilizations in Europe. Moreover, Japheth's link to peoples such as the Japanese and Koreans is another intriguing piece of this historical puzzle. These ancient cultures developed philosophical, artistic, and technological systems that still influence the modern world. The presence of legends and mythologies that speak of great migrations and ancestral peoples reinforces the idea of a distant but present connection between biblical origins and modern Asia. Could it be that these ancient stories still echo in cultural traditions today? Genetic studies also provide insights into this connection between peoples from different regions. Modern genetics reveals that certain Asian populations share common traits with ancient Europeans, suggesting that Japheth's migrations left a lasting impact on the populations that occupied these areas. This makes us reflect on how much human DNA carries hidden stories, waiting to be uncovered. And, of course, all these discoveries lead to a deeper reflection. Are our cultural and geographical borders as fixed as we think? Perhaps civilizations are more connected than historical divisions suggest, and understanding these connections can help us see humanity as a great tapestry of interconnected stories, where every thread holds importance. The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus is a valuable source when it comes to understanding the spread of Japheth's descendants. In his works, he mentions how the peoples that came from this lineage spread across regions such as Turkey, Spain, and various parts of Europe and Asia. Josephus, a meticulous historian, made sure to record these connections between biblical accounts and secular history, shedding light on the lasting impact of these peoples. Through his writings, we get a clear glimpse of how the Bible aligns with historical records. Josephus' account is particularly interesting when he describes how Japheth's descendants reached Europe. These groups settled in lands that would later be known for their great civilizations and empires. Think about how the Romans, Greeks, and Celts grew from these ancient roots, shaping the future of Europe. Josephus' record serves as a bridge between biblical traditions and the historical developments we continue to study. Other historical records also support Josephus' claims. From ancient Mesopotamian texts to Greek and Roman records, we find references to large migrations of peoples who, according to the Bible, descended from Japheth. The history of these migrations is not just about the formation of new nations, but about the creation of a network of cultural and technological influences that shaped the ancient world. The exchanges between these peoples helped create the backdrop that enabled the flourishing of empires. It's worth highlighting that these historical connections are not just of academic interest. By understanding how Japheth's descendants spread and influenced different regions, we can better appreciate how humanity has evolved in an interconnected way. The borders and divisions we know today are, in fact, the result of centuries of interaction and exchange between cultures that, at some point, shared a common origin. Flavius Josephus and other ancient chroniclers offer a fascinating window into the past. Their descriptions not only confirm biblical accounts, but also remind us that human history is a complex tapestry of interconnected narratives. And it makes us think, if we look closer, what more can we discover about our own roots and the interconnectedness of our stories? Regardless of racial or ethnic origins, the Bible reminds us of something fundamental. All human beings are created in the image of God. This spiritual perspective transcends the divisions we see in the modern world. It doesn't matter whether people descend from Japheth, Shem, or Ham, the truth is that we all have a divine purpose. When we look at the diversity of humanity, it's important to remember that, in God's eyes, these differences are only on the surface. What truly matters is the heart and soul. The spiritual interpretation of the Scriptures shows us that skin color does not affect divine love. Throughout the Bible, God demonstrates His love for all nations and peoples, regardless of their external appearance. This makes us reflect on how, at times, we focus on the differences that separate us rather than seeing the similarities that unite us. The Bible's true message is one of unity under a common purpose, to live according to divine teachings and seek a deeper connection with the Creator. This concept is reinforced in various biblical passages. In Galatians 3 verse 28, for example, Paul reminds us that there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. This powerful statement shows us that, to God, human distinctions of race, class, or gender hold no weight. In a world that often tries to divide us based on our outward appearance, the Bible invites us to see beyond that and embrace our true spiritual identity. And it's interesting to think about how this biblical vision of unity can transform our perspective on the modern world. By internalizing this message, we can begin to live in a way that promotes more empathy and understanding between people. Instead of focusing on what divides us, we can focus on what unites us. And, in doing so, fulfill God's desire to see humanity living in harmony, reflecting His image in a genuine and complete way. Therefore, when exploring the origins of different peoples, we must always remember that our deepest identity doesn't come from where we are born or the color of our skin, but rather from our relationship with God. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson the Bible offers, that regardless of who we are or where we come from, we all have the potential to live according to the divine purpose. Now that you have a deeper understanding of the origins of white-skinned people from a biblical perspective, the question remains, how can this knowledge transform your view of the world? Think about how history intertwines with spiritual roots and how, even with our differences, we are all part of a greater purpose. Have you ever reflected on what this means for your life today? Are you living according to the plan that God has laid out for you? The Bible constantly reminds us that it's not racial or cultural divisions that matter, but rather our relationship with God and with each other. So, how about applying this understanding to live with more empathy and purpose? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And of course, if you want to keep diving into fascinating topics like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any content. The journey of knowledge is just beginning.